Hey everybody, this is Brad from Johnson Small Engines, better known as a one-hand mechanic. If I can do it, you can too. Today we are working on a John Deere E130 and we're going to do some upgrades on the steering. We're going to install front wheel bearings instead of bushings. We'll get rid of those steel bushings that ruined your axles, and we're also going to install needle thrust bearings in the front steering to help it steer much easier and have a longer life. So let's look at the tools that we need today. You definitely need a jack to start with, some kind of a way to get the front wheels up off the ground. From left to right here on the counter, a heat gun could help you take off the caps, the dust caps, if needed. I'm going to show you the steel bushings that are inside these wheel hubs right now, and they have been around forever. You know, as long as you grease them, they're okay, but you got to grease the heck out of them all the time. So we're going to wheel bearings. Now, back in the 80s, John Deere had wheel bearings in their John Deere tractors, and then they got rid of them and went to these bushings. So now, from what I understand, they're actually going to all bearings with the new style series, and this is an older John Deere, so we're going to go ahead and put these wheel bearings. I'm going to put all the parts here in the link in the description below. We're going to be using the needle thrust bearings for what they call the poor man's power steering. It's a very nice addition to help the front suspension not wear out as fast. We have a 1/2 inch extension, and I'm using a 1-inch socket that I'm going to hit on the outer edges of your bearing. You have to be very careful that you do not hit the inner race. You will hurt your bearings. So just to hit the outer race, I'm using a 1-inch deep socket for that, and it fits perfectly on the outside of the edge of the bearing. We have a 1/2 inch wrench or a 13 millimeter, whatever fits the tie rod end, 17 millimeter or 11/16 for the nut on the tie rod end, some kind of a hook to take the caps off. Be careful. If I'm using a pointy hook, and if I'm not careful, I can poke a hole in the cap. So you want to be careful with that. You can just dole them out. These come, buy them at your local hardware store. The hooks, pair of pliers. People do ask me about the what kind of grease I use on my grease gun. It's a John Deere grease. I've been using it for years. The part number is a TY24416. A flathead slot head screwdriver, I call it a flathead, 3/8 ratchet, or I'd use an electric impact. A grease gun to fill the hubs when you're done putting the bearings in. Highly recommend gloves. This is a greasy job. And lots and lots and lots of rags. Starting with the floor jack. This is the front bracket that holds the bar for the mower deck in the front, so this is a very sturdy place to put your jack. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to seat it in there right now, and we're just going to let it at that. We're not going to jack it up quite yet. We do need to take the hood off, and this John Deere, these hoods right here on the E130s, they're not the easiest, but it's easy to unplug your headlights just by 2 little tabs here. You just unplug it, and then now this machine I did not clean before I did it. Everybody says, oh, your machines look so nice. It's a little bit hard to see this, but you have to slide your mower, or slide your hood one way a little bit, and then you lean it down a little bit, and then it'll pop out of the one side, and then it comes right out. It's a little hard to explain this, but you can see right here, this is the pivot, and there's a pivot on the other side here, and they have little slots, okay, on both sides. And basically you put the one side in, slide it down, and then you have to put the other side in, and then just lean it back. It can be a little bit tough, but that's pretty much it. So push it out, angle it up, it'll pop right off. Okay, so before we jack it up, I'm going to take the dust cap off. You can kind of get a feel for it if it's pliable or not, and then just be careful when you're going to use any kind of a prying part. You just don't want to, that came off actually very easily. It's just very pliable, and these will clean up too. Okay, so flathead screwdriver. Just be careful when you take these off that they can shoot across the room if you're not careful, and you're just kind of just going to pry them up and off like so. Okay, now this has a washer here. We're just going to put it off to the side. Now this is where I would jack it up. Since it's up off the ground, we're going to go ahead and pull this off. And what I want you to look for too is run your finger along the bottom edge of your axle, and you're going to feel a ridge. I have not seen a John Deere axle that has the steel bushings that not have a ridge on the bottom. And be careful you don't cut yourself. So if you need to, take a rag, clean it off. And where the bushings sit, you're going to feel a ridge. Now this tractor only has 71 hours on it, and he was greasing it, so the ridge is very minimal. Now, the people that have had problems with these new bearings not working, you may have the hub maybe a little bit larger and get out around, or when the axle is very worn and when the bearing goes on, it just is sloppy. So you got to be careful when you do this job that if you need to replace this, you can. I do have a video, I'll put that in the link in the description, on how to take these out and put them back in again. But we're also going to take this out now to the thrust needle bearings right here. So while we have this off, we might as well go ahead and do the bearings real quick first. I did forget one tool. I told myself I was going to do the tools at the last little part because I always forget a tool. But this is my homemade, it's a big bolt. I use it to hit the bushings out. It works out pretty well for me. So you're just going to slide it in. You're going to feel for the ridge on the other side of the bearing. And smack it out. And here is the old bearing right here. I'm going to go ahead and put the new bearing in. And it does have fresh grease in there. And as you can see on this side, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. This is the grease fitting. Just make sure that the grease fitting goes on. It goes in towards the engine, okay? So that's just the way they are. So your valve stem is on the outside so you can check your tire pressure. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the first bearing in. They're going to sit right in here. Now if these are sloppy, if these are really sloppy and they go in real easy, you may need a new rim, or you may need to, you may need to bend the rim in a little bit. So these should fit nice and snug. I'm going to go ahead and turn it like this. Now this is where I'm going to use my 1-inch socket. Have to make sure when you hit it, you're going to make sure you're on the outside of it. And it should take a couple hits until you feel it bottom out. And then just use your fingernail, make sure you have no gap. You just have to make sure you're hitting the outer edge. And the reason why I put that bearing in first is it helps me line up my punch. Everybody out there with 2 hands, you could probably just go ahead and punch them both out at the same time, but I like that. It doesn't hurt the bearing, and it just helps me align to get the other bearing out. Very simple. So I'm going to go ahead and put the other new bearing in. Now at this point, you could fill the hub up with grease, but when you put the hub back on the axle, it's going to push the grease back out again, so I tend not to. I'm going to go ahead and tap this in lightly just to get this straight. Now I'm only tapping on the outside edge. That helps me get lined up. Then again, outside edge. We're good to go now. Now while I have this off, before we put this on, we're going to go ahead and take the dust cap off of this axle right here, because this is where we're going to put the thrust needle bearings. So feels pretty pliable. Just going to go ahead and reach under there a little bit. And just be real careful you don't poke a hole in yours, but the kits do come with them. Okay, so now this, as you can see, this is from John Deere. That's a lot of play, but I mean, all the weight from the engine is sitting on the axle, so it doesn't really matter. You're not jumping, so you don't have to worry about it going up and down. It just sits like this the whole time. We have a same kind of clip. Oh, it just fell right on out. All right, so you take the clip off, and this actually, I'm surprised it slipped out that easy. I was wondering if we were going to have to take these off. Obviously, it just fell out, and we don't need to take them off. I noticed that they're usually, I know a lot of the American Yard products, Sears, Craftsman, a lot of these have washers on the bottom. I'm very surprised. Kind of wonder if somebody had this off, but I just started doing the needle bearings on here, so I'm going to have to say with the kit, it comes with the washers. Now, there is a washer here. This washer, believe it or not, is a spacer, but it also keeps the dust cap on too. Okay, so we have 2 sets. We have a set for the one side and a set for the other side, and these are just thrust roller bearings. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put a little grease on them. Make sure you don't have any washers here. And if there is a washer with that much play, I just leave the washer on there. But they want you to put a washer on the bottom, and then the needle bearings, thrust needle bearings, washer on top. I'm gonna go ahead and slide this back up in here. Now, if yours does not slide easily, now I'm holding this up with my one arm just so it doesn't fall out. But if this is stuck, just means you never greased it. The grease fitting is here. You should always be greasing your front suspension up here in your wheel that I showed you. And there's also one on the center of the pivot of this axle. You should always do them at least once or twice a year, depending on how many hours you put on your machine, maybe even more. Okay, so your clip, your C-clip, you can throw it on, put it on top here, and there's plenty of room with the washers. Everything's lining up just perfectly. This is where you need your pair of pliers, and you're gonna snap that in. And it's a little tricky to snap them in with this washer here because you tend to want to push against that washer. Now, we still have play, but I tell you, it's a lot easier, and the play is fine. Now, we're gonna go ahead and grease this right here since we're here. And it should come out the top and the bottom. As you can see right here, comes out the bottom, and you can see right here, it came out the top. All right, and I like to clean up around the areas because, believe it or not, when you're driving your tractor in the lawn, you're gonna collect a lot of debris and it gets stuck to it, so we don't want that. But I leave that right there. I'm gonna go ahead, and because my cap is pliable, I'm gonna go ahead and put the cap on, and then we're gonna go ahead and put the wheel on. Remember, grease fitting on the inside, your valve stem on the outside. Just like so. We have a washer and C-clip. Now mine did not clip in. You have to make sure you get them clipped in. Like that. Make sure they're 100% clipped in. Check to make sure they're not going to fall off. Perfect roller bearing. I apologize for the dirt. Like I said, I did not wash this machine first before. You guys are always used to me working on a very clean machine. But that's it. This side's done. Okay, so now we're on the other side, and I did not show you. I'll show you on this one though. But we want to make sure that we grease both sides and fill the hubs up. All right, but it's still up in the air just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and I can still hit it on the ground just to have a little bit of leverage. Take the cap off. Cap's off. You do have to find on your clip, on your C-clip, you do have to find out where the slots are. And I kind of just feel around for it. This one just shot out a little bit. Right here. Washer. Slide the wheel off. On the inside, there should be a washer on the inside of these. Just so you know, sometimes they fall off on the rim. There's a washer on the inside, and I'm using a magnet just so you guys see that. All right, you have one on each of the axles, and a lot of times it gets stuck to the bearing. So I just thought that was stuck there, but it brought to my attention that, yes, there is a bearing there. Make sure it stays there. Just gonna tap this lightly with my hammer on the outside edge, not the center. It just helps me line it up, makes it a little bit easier to get it in. Okay, so we're gonna leave this off for now. Gotta be careful you don't shoot it across the room. And you also have to remember that this might drop down, so I'm gonna try to hold it up. Take the clip out, take the washer off, bring this down. All right, so we did not need, those sockets and the wrench would have taken the tie rods off, so we didn't need to do that, so that was nice. Now, clean this up best you can. We got washer, I'm going to put this down for now. And if you guys are wondering how I just pump the grease onto this bearing, my gun right here, this is, I like this particular gun because when I push against my chest with it and hold it with my arm, I actually can make grease come out. So how about that one, right? I'm telling you, just put your mind to it, you can do anything. Okay. And also, when we grease this front axle, it's just like the other side. It will push grease in here. All right, so that's gonna help. Push that back up. Looks like it hasn't been greased in a while. Big washer. All right, now this one, this one's actually showing a little. All right, so looks like this washer is either, there's no extra washer on top. We have a little bit of an issue with that. So it looks like we need a washer that's half this thickness. So you may come across this where the washers, once you put the washers back, you can't get the C-clip on. Look at the top of the axle, make sure it's flush, make sure there's no problem with it. I can definitely tell where the C-clip goes. There's not much, so when I put that on there, it's too much. Now this is the wheel axle nut on the outside for the cover is thinner than the one for the top axle. All right, well, we're gonna try swapping that out. It's the same size as far as the diameter. Let's see if we can get this to work. Since I had that clip in halfway, it's giving me a little opportunity to take my arm away so I can use it to line up this. And then went right in. How about that? There's definitely a thickness. And we have a little play, which is good, up and down. Not much, but we do have play. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little grease in here. Coming out the top and the bottom now. All right, a little bit up here. Make sure the top cap goes on okay, which it does. All right, now let's see if the wheel will go on with the thick washer from the top. All right, it looks like there's a lot of room. I wonder if somebody had this thing apart. But that actually works perfect. Well, how about that? Make sure it's in. We do have a little bit of play. Perfect. Put the cap back on. Now, we didn't do it on the air side, as we got to grease this. Now, this is a very, like I said, very greasy job. So be prepared. Now I pump these until I feel my grease gun getting a little bit stiff when I'm pumping the handle. And knowing that these hubs are maybe half full, it's going to take a little bit of grease. And I just probably pumped in 20 pumps right now. I don't want to go too much more than that for now. These will get a little stiff, as this did. And obviously, you know me, this is going to be cleaned up before it goes out. And I'm going to show you a picture of that right now. See, I always clean. Make them nice. And yeah, the job's not done yet, so we're definitely going to clean this up at the end. There is one more grease fitting under here that is going to be very hard for me to show you, but with my finger on it right here, I'm not sure if you can see this. Make sure you grease this grease fitting. So that's pretty much it for how to install front wheel bearings and thrust needle bearings for your steering to help your steering out. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, share my channel with your friends, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.